Well, I don't remember if this next happening was a direct result of me being aware that Donna hadn't been very happy about being left while Jim and I played explorers, travelers, hitchhikers, whatever we played when we made our big trip. But anyway, Donna and I decided that we'd go down and visit, as tourists, St. Augustine, Florida. I don't really know whether we saw a flyer laying around the post somewhere, or somebody just told us they'd been there and it was a great place to visit. Don't really know how we decided on St. Augustine. But it had some appeal because of the historic nature of the place. It had been a Spanish port and a fort with soldiers stationed there way back there, a long time, 100 or so years before the Pilgrims landed in Plymouth Rock. The other thing that appealed to us is it was right on the ocean, and neither one of us had ever seen either the Atlantic or the Pacific Ocean. So that, we thought it would be neat to be on a beach, to go out and get into the water. So we made a train trip down, got there in the middle of the afternoon, and didn't walk very far until we saw a house that advertised rooms for rent. Went up and made ourselves known. Was there a vacancy? Yes, there was. Come in, have a look. Came in, we had a look, and a nice, neat, clean little house and a nice, neat, clean little room. The price was right. Got that settled real quick. We were tired, and she was pregnant by then, I think, a couple of months. In fact, she tells me the doctor hadn't really thought she ought to make that trip. I didn't remember that. And evidently we thought she was healthy enough that the doctor wanted to be a worrywart, let him be a worrywart. So we didn't try to do any further sightseeing that first day. We just kicked back and looked around right in the area where we were and picked up some more flyers about what was there to see. And then, of course, sat out on the front porch and looked at the Atlantic Ocean. A few boats went by, nothing huge. Looked like maybe some people came in and had been out fishing. It was just a whole different world, and a nice world for us to observe. And, I'd got a 3-day pass again. And we slept good. Got up the next morning, and I can't remember. I think maybe there was a bus that we took over to the actual old fort. And, it was, you paid a little fee to go in, if I remember right. It wasn't much. And they gave you a little sheet of paper that you could walk around, and they tell you about these cannons and how they were pointed, and how at some time or other they'd been fired on somebody that was threatening, and how there'd been a base to deal with pirates. Just, the regular tourist kind of thing. Old cannons had been brought back in there, or maybe they'd never left. I don't know. It even had some cannonballs laying there. Boy, some of those balls were as big as a big softball. We enjoyed that. We weren't into history a whole lot, but it was impressive to us that, or to me at least, that, my gosh, this had been an important port, an important military establishment for hundreds of years. Of course, it wasn't anymore. Well, we then got to reading what else was around and found out that there was a marine land out south, down the highway a little bit further, and decided neither one of us had ever been to marine land, and found out that it wasn't going to be real expensive, that the biggest cost would be to get out there, and we said, we'll just try the thumb, see how that works. So we're out standing on the road, and big, fancy, expensive car stops, and very well-dressed people in it. Where are you going? Well, we're trying to get out to SeaWorld. Well, that's close to where we live. Climb in. So we got in the back seat. They introduced themselves, and we introduced ourselves. And later I realized that that name was Stimson or Stinson, I've forgotten which, and that was a name associated with Franklin Delano Roosevelt's presidency. That this was a man that had either been a secretary of something and on the cabinet, or had some other big job where his name was in the news enough that I realized, wait a minute, you have ridden in a car with somebody and met somebody that was involved in national government. But they were very nice, and they wanted to do, again, nice things for a soldier and his little wife. And they actually took us on into their home. And I think he had asked me if I liked to fish, and I'd said, oh, yeah, I like to fish. And to make a long story short, we stayed at their place for a little while, and he gave me a pole and some bait, and there was a river right on the edge of his property. A river emptied into the Atlantic. And he said, you cast out in there and let your bait drift with the flow of the water, and you just might catch something. I did. I caught a fish that was, I'm going to say, 2 feet long. The ugliest thing I'd ever seen. I couldn't get the hook out of it, so I finally cut it off and turned the thing back loose. I didn't know what to do with it. I didn't think they wanted it, and it didn't look to me like anything anybody'd want to eat. I don't remember the details, but we got on out to Marineland. And the Marineland wasn't a fancy thing like the one out at SeaWorld in San Diego. But, this is way back then. What they had was 2 or 3 big tanks. And as you walked around, there were parts of the tank that were glassed, that you could look in and see sharks and other fish in there swimming around. And it was very nice and very impressive to us. So we, spent an hour or 2 there, and were able to get a ride back into town. So that was the highlight in one sense, but the biggest highlight was when we got into the ocean, waded out above our waist, and a little bit spooky about getting in any deeper, splashed water on each other, and laughed and played, and had a good time in the water. Salt water. Never been in salt water before, either one of us. Never been in an ocean before, and we felt pretty uptown about the whole thing. So then we went back and spent another night in our rented room, and the next day caught the train back to our home at Fort Benning in our little upstairs servants' quarters.